All right, I think we're live on all of our platforms. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Rabbi Chernitsky, Director of Chabad Newfoundland. This is the weekly Parsha class. It is quite late. It's usually starting at 8 p.m. local time. Had a couple of scheduling conflicts. That's why there was no class last week. My apologies. So we're full throttle, full speed ahead this week. We have the second Parsha right now. The Parsha of the week, the third portion, is the second Parsha in the book of Shmais, the book of Exodus. That's what was the very first parsha, Shmais, of the second book. Now it's the second parsha of the second book, Parshas Va'eiro, not to be confused with the Parshas Vayeiro in the book of Genesis. It is the first class since the three hostages were released: Rami Gonen, Emily Damari, and Doron Sternbracher. We're delighted for the families, wish them well, wish them speedy recovery to the hostages, pray for the speedy return of all the hostages in the best state possible. At the same time, we're all concerned for the safety and security of the Holy Land. May God have mercy on all of us. Okay. We're going to be speaking about today, to change the topic up rapidly, we're going to speak about our mission, our shluchas in life, our mission. And how that mission is our piece of the puzzle, God's puzzle. And as small and as unimportant as it may seem, as small as unimportant as our life may seem, it's the mission, it's the very mission that God gave us. That's what He expects from us, and He has given us extraordinary strengths to fulfill it and to do it in the best way possible. When it comes to kfira, which is the denial of the existence of God, there are different levels. There's, to divide it simply one and two, we're going to, at the end of the class, speak about three aspects, but to speak about just one and two. Number one, somebody who just denies the existence of Hashem. That's a minority of the world. Number two, though, kfirash keita, like the quiet type of kfira, a quiet, low-level type of denial of God's omnipotence, that's most of us. Right? What are we saying? We say, God is great, but I'm small. Right? So God is so great that how could He care about me? One time the Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke about a person who steals. And he robs, not because he doesn't believe in God. Because he believes, he steals. Because he believes in the omnipotent, omnipresent God, he says, what's the difference to God if I steal? Doesn't affect him. Of course, it's an unhealthy attitude. But we all go through this emotion, through this feeling that God is so great, then I'm insignificant. I'm just a speck of dust in the sandstorm of the universe. So why should I try hard? Or does it really matter if I keep Shabbat or I eat kosher or don't eat kosher? How can I affect God in any way? And we're going to say that this attitude is not just wrong, but in a way, it's a denial of the existence of God. It goes against the Jewish belief in God, because God, yes, it's all powerful and everywhere, etc., but He created everything, and everything comes from Him, and He decided every detail. So He decided every detail means He decided the way your life is going to play out. He decided the way everything in your life is playing out, and so that has significance, even though it seems to us small. That's what we're going to say today. The problem is we feel disconnected because this kefira, when we deny, when we don't recognize Hashem, God, who He truly is, there's a disconnect between us and our life, right? Because we feel that who I am and what I do every day, that I go to work and I take care of my family, maybe I do some charitable acts, some volunteerism, maybe I donate a little bit. That's not connected. Like my mission in life, I'm so unfulfilled. And I can relate to this personally, by the way. I feel so unfulfilled. Look at all the things that I'm doing. All of this is completely insignificant. God is so great, and I'm stuck paying bills and going to work 9 to 5 every day. We're gonna say today, though, is that our part, whatever it is that God throws our way, that by divine providence, but we are engaged, involved in every day and every moment, that's our piece of the puzzle in God's world. And that is exactly what we're supposed to be doing at that moment. Everything I have, the positive, the not so positive, my strengths, my shortcomings, everything, it's everything I need to succeed in life. And God is standing by with me, next to me, helping me achieve that. And we're going to ask a very simple question on the parsha that leads to this topic. And that is, what's the deal with the plague of the frogs? So, to give some background, last week we spoke with the Jews starting the Egyptian slavery starting. This week, we're going to have 7 of the 10 plagues that God wrought upon the Egyptians. Next parsha is the last 3. And the second plague is the plague of frogs. The plague of frogs stands out in a number of ways. Number 1, how did the plague of frogs make it to the 10 plagues, right? The purpose of the 10 plagues was to break Pharaoh, was a series of sanctions to break him, to cause him to let the Jews go. Excuse me. But seemingly, a frog doesn't do much. It's not like a snake or a scorpion that bites, that stings. It's a cute little thing. Doesn't bother anyone. Maybe it doesn't produce milk or doesn't produce eggs like a cow or a chicken. So it's pretty neutral. Doesn't hurt anybody. So how did the plague of frogs break Pharaoh? What was the purpose? Furthermore, it says that the plague of the frogs stayed in the Nile. All the other plagues, after their time ran out, right? We know that each plague lasted for a week. After the time ran out, the plague disappeared. The plague of frogs is the only one that stayed in the Nile. Why? It must be there was some message that the frog had to send Pari. There was some message, some eternal message that Pari had to see whenever he looked at the Nile daily. He had to get this message. What was the message? The Torah tells us twice this thing. Rak be'ir tisha arna. 2 times Torah has to say that the frogs remained in the Nile. All the other plagues disappeared, like the locusts after the plague was done, they disappeared completely, and so on. But not the frogs. Why? What is the eternal message of the frogs? And we're going to see the answer is so delicious and powerful. Because the frogs taught Paro that every single person, every single thing, no matter how minute, how seemingly insignificant, has a mission, has a purpose, has a goal. The smallest, most basic life form. That's what Hashem wanted. And Pharaoh said, 1 second, I'm the king of the world. He was king of Mesopotamia. If a frog was sent by God to tell me something, I for sure have a God-given mission. I for sure have a connection with God. God expects something from me. And we think about Pare as Exhibit A, a guy that denies the existence of God completely. That's not true. He was Exhibit B. He was the second type of can't say atheism, but second type of denier. Like we said before, he said Hashem is too great, right? Like we find as the Greeks believed. So Paro says, what does God have to do with me? He's busy with much more important things. So Hashem sent him the seemingly insignificant frog to teach him this very lesson, that everything and everyone has a God-given mission with God-given strengths to keep that mission. And that is the message that we all have to internalize, and that is why the frogs have to stay in the Nile, because you can't forget this. And not just for Pharaoh, but for all of us. We ought to think about how Hashem is with us wherever we go. Everything we do incorporates as Hashem's special siyata d'shmaya, divine assistance, whether it's in our relationships with our spouse, with our children. And this is the whole story of the small insignificant frogs that plagued Egypt. When you sit at your Shabbat table, that seems very complicated. It's such a headache. That is your mission. Make it interesting, make it engaging. That's your part of the world that you have to sanctify and perfect. That is your part in Hashem's puzzle. Right, as the famous Jewish psychologist Viktor Frankl, of blessed memory, said and wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, that someone who has the what can deal with any how. When the goal, when the mission is clear, you could get through it no matter how challenging. Right? The croaking frog is the eternal lesson that even the small and insignificant has a mission. So let's take it from the beginning. The 10 plagues affected three things: the Egyptians' property, their bodies, and I can't read my note here. I'm going to give examples. The Dever, when the animals died, so they lost their belongings. The plague of boils, the plague of kinim, the lice that affected the body of the Egyptians. Oh, there we go. The third was the animals, and then the plague of the locusts, Arbe, that also depleted their possessions. So the plagues affected their wealth, like the crops. It affected their animals, affected their bodies, like we said, the lice and the boils. All meant to break Pharaoh's ego, who thought he himself was a deity, and let the Jews go. But comes the second plague, and the plague of frogs didn't accomplish any of the above. The frogs just croak. They didn't affect the crops, didn't affect the animals, didn't affect the people, seemingly. There are 4 plagues that involved animals: Tzfardeia, frogs; Kinim, lice; Aroiv, the mixed group of animals; and Arbe, the locusts. All that we understand the damage, all that we understand the ramifications, but not Tzfardeia, but not the frogs. How did that put any pressure into Pharaoh? Why would that pressure him to letting the Jews go? So, if we look in Tehillim, we find that in the book of Psalms, King David makes a reference to the frogs coming twice. They came during the second plague, the plague of frogs, and they came back during Aroiv. There was a second coming of the frogs during the plague of the mixed animals. So why did Hashem have to bring it as a separate plague, plague number 2, if the frogs came with all the other animals by Aroiv towards the end? Now, Rashi explains, it's a quote from the Medrash, that the frogs got into people's stomachs through the back of their body, and they croaked inside their stomach, and then left through the throat. So the Medrash does explain what the nuisance was of the frogs. Why was it bothersome? Why would it compel part of the Jews go? However, that's not the pshat. That is not at the most basic level of Torah interpretation, which never loses its meaning. Okay? I'm going to skip this now. There's a little joke. They say when the king of the jungle, the lion got married, so he's standing there with the lioness, and all the animals come and wish him Mazel Tov. Suddenly, he feels somebody like poking him. Turns around, this little mouse and says, "Ah, Achim, bro, Mazel Tov, how happy! What a great day!" The lion turns to the mouse and says, "Dude, I am not your bro. I'm the king of the jungle. Get out." So the mouse says, "Don't worry. When I got married, at the beginning, I also thought that I was the king of the jungle." Anyway, it hurts to those that are married because I know it's true. So what's the deal with the frogs? The Medrash says that when Nebuchadnezzar built an idol and he was forcing everybody to bow down, Mishael, Hanani, and Azariah, 3 Jews that he had kidnapped from Jerusalem at the time of the destruction, he brought them with him to Babylon. He forced them also to bow down to the idol. Of course, it's forbidden, it's idolatry. So the Medrash says that Mishael, Hanani, and Azariah, those 3 Jews, they took a lesson from the frogs in Egypt and jumped into the fire. Now, this is super problematic. You don't need to learn a lesson from the frogs. Idolatry is forbidden, even without the frogs. They had no choice but to jump into the fire. And if we're going to look for some sort of precedence, where do we find that a Jew or somebody gave up his life to sanctify God's name, not to acknowledge, even superficially, not to acknowledge idolatry? Look at Abraham Avinu. Nimrod threw him into a fiery furnace. Also, the Medrash tells us that Mishael, Hanani, and Azariah were not commanded to jump into the fire. What does that mean? Sorry, the frogs. The Medrash says that Mishael, Hanani, and Azariah said the frogs who didn't have to jump into the fire jumped in. We need to jump in. So we ask, they had to jump in. God told them to jump in. That was their mission. So Tosfos and the Gemara, like quotes the Medrash, is a beautiful thing. Tosfos says, what was the novelty of the frogs? What was special about the frogs that they taught us a lesson of unbelievable proportions that nothing else in the universe, nothing else in history had taught us before? Not Abraham, who was thrown into a fire, nobody else. What was the lesson? That they chose to jump in first. Not that they jumped into the fire. That was God's mission, but they wanted to be the first to be in the fire. Think about everything we've been through these past 15 months with the war against the barbaric Hamas. All these young men that we've lost, the young soldiers of Israel, who are willing to give their lives and jump into the line of fire, to be the first ones in the line of fire. This is what the frogs taught us, that there's the merit to be the first one to jump into the fire to do God's mission. Mishael, Hanani, and Azariah could have run away, but they didn't do that. And they appreciated from the frogs that they should jump into the fire with alacrity, with zest, with gusto. This is a lesson we didn't learn from anything else. And this is all to teach us the value of our lives today. A regular day, not a special day, not a Yom Tov, not a day when you're literally jumping in the fire. And we need to understand what seems insignificant, it's really our mission in life. That's why Okay. We'll skip the story for now. So this is the message the frogs gave to Pharaoh. That even the smallest thing, the smallest being, is by Hashem's divine providence this sign. And that is the message that the frogs delivered and none of the other plagues delivered. So the frog is like the koifer, like we said at the beginning, the person who denies Hashem's existence, but not fully. He's quite soft. He's not denying Hashem's existence, but he says Hashem is so great and I'm so small. Look at the frog. The frog doesn't cause any damage, doesn't sting, it doesn't bite, but doesn't do anything productive either. It's neutral. Paro's paradigm that he said, I'm a deity, I made the Nile, which of course is falsehood. It all came crumbling down when he saw the small, insignificant frog jumping into the ovens by God's design. That's why they had to stay in the Nile, because we need the message front and center. That all the small things happen to us by God's divine plan. As the Talmud says, Lekach nivra ha'adam yechidi. That's why man was created alone. Only afterwards other people came around. There never was, and there never will be anybody like you in the world. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter who's listening to this class. There never was, and there never will be somebody like you because you are unique. And you have your unique mission, and you have your unique strengths and unique shortcomings. And it all comes together for that. Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, it says that he was tempted, he was about to sin and be intimate with the wife of his boss, Potiphar. But Talmud says, at the last moment, he got himself together, he overcame the temptation because he saw the image of his father, the Mus Dioknoi Shel Oviv, the Talmud says. The Lubavitcher Rebbe pointed out something fascinating. He said like this. He said that the Talmud says, it's not the Rebbe's idea, the Talmud says that Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, Joseph's father, his face looked like Adam Harishon, looked like Adam, the first man. So Joseph, when he saw the face of his father, he saw the face of Adam Harishon, the first man. And so he understood, I am that first man. I am alone in the world. The whole world is on my shoulders. My decisions, whether to give into a temptation or to resist, has cosmic ramifications. Adam, the first man, he said yes to eating from the forbidden fruit. Joseph said, no, I'm not going to eat from the forbidden fruit. I'm not going to be intimate with my boss's wife. And he rectified that sin. But it is the same idea. He says, I'm alone. I'm unique. I have a special mission. And each and every one of us is Adam Harishon. Each and every one of us is alone in that our mission is unique, that God is waiting for us, standing on top of us, saying, what is he going to do with what I've given him? Right? Queen Esther, in the palace, when she is hesitating to go speak to Ahasuerus, to resign, to annul the decree against the Jews, Mordechai tells her, who knows if it's like for a time like this that you became the queen? You think it's just by chance that out of all the women in the world, after years of searching for a wife for Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, They pick the knees of the leader of the Frumis, the leader of the Jews. What are the odds? Open your eyes. It's God's providence in the most blatant, manifest way. And I'll finish with a word, an insight, an idea for the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov said, what I'm most scared of or most concerned about is not haughtiness, gaiva in Hebrew, but humility. When people think, oh, I'm nothing, I'm insignificant, I'm not good enough, I don't know, I don't know enough Torah, my actions, my mitzvahs are just worthless. That's what's dangerous. When we put ourselves down, but we don't realize the strength that we have and how our mitzvah, our tzedakah, our charity, our study of Torah, that has cosmic ramifications. Just an insignificant frog. What's the deal? What's the big deal with a frog? You have been the most amazing power, God-given power to change your world and change the world at large. L'chaim, never forget. It's been a pleasure. I'm Rabbi Chernitsky, Director of Chabad in Newfoundland. Early Shabbat Shalom. Hope you enjoy the class. See you next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. local time.